Hi, welcome to the PhD Journey Unplugged podcast. My name is Dr. Sarah Gordon, and as you can tell, I have my friend and colleague back on the show, Dr. Rehan Tahir. Hi, Rehan.
Hi there. Good morning. How are you?
Good. Welcome back to the PhD
Thank you.
Journey. We got a
Thanks for
lot to
having me.
talk
Appreciate it.
about today.
I know. I'm excited.
Me too. A lot of announcements, new things, and we're talking about the courage to grow today. And I think, and I don't want to give it away yet, but you have definitely demonstrated that recently. So I'm excited to talk about that.
Awesome. Thank you.
So before we get started, just a little bit of to frame our conversation today. We're actually going to talk about something it sounds inspiring on the surface, right? The courage to grow. It sounds very exciting. But actually, sometimes in real life, it feels very unsettling, right? We're pushing ourselves outside our comfort zone. Sometimes we physiologically, mentally, and physically push back a little bit. It doesn't necessarily feel comfortable. We can feel, anxiety and fear, and it's so. What we're going to talk about is how do you put yourself in that kind of uncomfortable space because you kind of need some of that to grow. Growth asks something of us. It asks us to move forward before we feel ready. And we're both being challenged, and we'll share some examples on this show today about how we're being challenged to grow, and we might not necessarily feel like we're ready for that moment. A lot of
Mm.
times, that's exactly where you need to be, and that's where growth takes place. Another way to say it is how do we tolerate uncertainty? It doesn't feel good. We're humans. We want to know. We want to know everything. We want to control everything. We don't always have that opportunity. And it's not necessarily fitting within a growth mindset either. So we're going to sit down and we're going to explore this today, how we stretch ourselves beyond our comfort zone, and where does that feel like the sweet spot for growth? And I'm excited to have you back. And so I'm just gonna ask you, how's it going?
Wow, that's an amazing question. I think it's going good. Excuse me. So I'm working on a lot of different projects as you've been following along, and I appreciate that. Um, the big one is I'm taking your cues from you and your lead and watching really just over the last year how you've developed this podcast and invited different guests on. It's really just been an inspiration for me personally. I'm going to just throw it out there and how
Thank you.
appreciative I am. And I really have kind of started my own podcast journey to some degree. I mean, I'm not posting too frequently yet, but I have some great ideas. And I mean, ultimately, I think uh, when we get into these fear type responses, I get in my head a lot, right? I don't know if I'm going to do good at this or if I'm going to succeed at that. And so start to talk myself out of making some of the steps that I think would be fun or important. And I've been able to kind of overcome that just by being on here with you, a couple times and seeing kind of your growth here. I was like, you know what? I think I might be able to do this. So
Well,
let me
it's
try it.
it's funny because the first time you came on, I was like, you have a great radio voice. I think I said that to you. Like, you have a great
And a
podcast voice.
great radio phase two.
What'd you say?
I said I have a great radio phase two is what
Oh,
I said.
right. I not know that joke. But like the first time I was like, I'm so grateful that you're here and we're friends. We met in our PhD programs and we kind of helped each other along in that journey. But I was like, my first thought when you came on was like, you should be doing this yourself. You can do this yourself. I mean, we'll continue to collaborate and be on each other's shows, but there was no reason for you not to take that step forward if you wanted to and you had a desire to do it. And so you did it. I'm really proud of you. When we talk about the courage to grow, it does take some courage to start something brand new. And you fumble. Learning is all about fumbling,
Yeah.
right? You fumble. And in the beginning, I had so many technology glitches. Every episode, somebody was freezing. It could even happen now. You have to
Yep.
give yourself some grace and understanding that you are kind of in this growth period, and we're always going to be in a growth period. We always
Yeah.
will. Well, I'm really proud of you. So let's tell our listeners about your podcast, and then also how you're actually getting much more into strength and conditioning coaching.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. So the podcast itself is called the Next Set Podcast. And so kind of I was thinking of a name. That's always hard, right? What am I going to call this thing? And so, I was just kind of thinking about my own journey. And I talked about this in, I think, my first episode in terms of, being in the health and fitness space many, many years ago, 20 some 5 odd years ago, having my own health problems and then, coming out of that that this is basically for me kind of the next set of the phase of my life in terms of that,
Love that.
that part of that. So yeah, thank you. So that's kind of where I came up with the name is this is my next set in essence in terms of a life phase. And it really is to complement the strength and conditioning aspect. I really wanting to make a push back into coaching. It is something that I love to do. I love to educate. I love to learn. Education for me is a part of learning. I'm sure that it's the same for you, right? Like we do this, education doesn't stop.
No,
Growth, like you just said,
lifelong.
doesn't
Right.
stop. Knowledge is a lifelong learning thing. And
Yes.
so for me, it's an opportunity to interview people that expose myself to people that have something to share with me and I can learn from but also hopefully in the process educate others. And so really that's the mechanism behind it. Um, and I think it will help people maybe understand a little bit more of my philosophy on exercise and fitness and nutrition and whatever related to those topics. And that's kind of
Yeah.
where I'm at.
I always say one of the things that I love the most about this platform and the PhD Journey Unplugged podcast is learning from people that come on the show. And it's fun. It's fun to learn from other people and to hear their stories and how and the things that they've overcome to get to where they are in their lives. And it's very inspiring. We came out of our PhD programs, and when we talk about the courage to grow and accepting uncertainty, you have to be willing to maintain a certain load
Hmm.
of something, whatever it is you're doing. And you talk about strength and conditioning. Like you're not going to
Yeah.
grow muscle. You're not going to get stronger and have more endurance if you don't have some type of performance load on you to push
Hmm.
yourself forward, right?
Right.
But the PhD journey to me felt like a long-term 5-year cognitive performance load.
Yeah.
And we were growing, but it was also kind of exhausting. And so I
Yeah.
think as we talk about this today, we need to understand there's this kind of balance between pushing ourselves to grow, but allowing ourselves, just like with human performance, physical activity, allow ourselves time to recover too from that
Hmm.
and
Yep.
figuring out that balance. It's very hard. And that's why I want your expertise today. Like, how do we tell our listeners, how hard do you push? When do you know when to pull back? Maybe we use metaphors in the gym, but I mean, I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. How do you know how much how much tolerance you have? Everybody's very individualized. How do you push
Yeah.
yourself further to tolerate more?
Yeah.
When are you on a precipice of breaking? I mean, how do you know?
Well, that's a great question. And I participated in a tactical workshop recently, and I think the gentleman's name, I may mess up his name. His name is Josh Hagan or Hager. I apologize
Okay.
if I mess his name up. He's a professor at, I believe, Ohio State University, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on that, but
No, I'm
I think
just
that's
Josh
his
now.
name. Yeah. And so he talked about in terms of performance, and this is also related to strength and conditioning, is you have load, stress, you
Hmm.
you push yourself through that load, but then there's also this component of recovery. So load and recovery, and that equation together at a high level will then lead to improved performance. And so when you look at this in terms of strength and conditioning, that's basically what we're doing, right?
Okay.
We are finding an adaptation that we wish to have as an outcome, whether that's improved VO2 max or improved strength or improved hypertrophy, whatever that looks like, figuring out the right stress to apply to overcome your body's homeostasis or equilibrium, right? At enough of a dose that you can elicit that adaptation without causing overabundance of stress or exhaustion,
Mm-hmm.
because you need to provide that load, let yourself adapt to that load, recover, and then you slowly then increase that progressive overload, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think in a lot of ways, and I'm not a psychologist, but I think in a lot of ways, mentally, that's kind of how we operate as well. We need these small micro traumas, if you will, or micro stresses, if you will, to kind of build up our resilience and then learn how to overcome those and then repeat and slightly increase versus having this huge influx of stress all at once. That's very difficult to adapt to, very difficult to overcome. I mean, that's my
Yeah.
take and trying to relate it back. I don't know what you think. What do you think about that?
I think that you're spot on. Because I did some research for this episode, and what you just described is they call, well, they use the word stretching, expanding,
Yeah.
right? You're
Yes.
expanding your skill set, you're expanding your knowledge base, you're expanding your experiences. Can't say that word. Um, because when we have too much on us, like if you go, let's use the weight room again. If you go in and you're just super pumped, you're excited, and you just lift way too heavy. I mean, you can get a bicep tear or
Sure.
blow your back out, or I mean, there's all these things like, and you just jump in too much too fast. So I like that progressive overload. I think we could use that as a metaphor for mental um, performance,
Sure.
mental
Yeah.
health, and just look at it more as like the courage to grow says. I'm going to push myself a little bit further, and expand my reach.
Right.
Maybe that's
Yeah.
it. I don't know. I think I mean, there's different levels, like our comfort zone, right? And I don't think the research says you can't learn in your comfort zone. I mean, I think it's just that it's a lower level of, um, I can't think of the word. Maybe it's like just a higher, like you feel more safe in it, right?
Yeah.
So you're not
Well, yeah,
maybe pushing yourself too much as if you are less in a comfort zone. You're really, I don't know how to verbalize it. Help
I think I
me.
know what you, well, I mean, I think I know what you're saying, but it does bring up an idea for me. And I thought about this last year or a year ago is and I had suffered with this myself. It's like you get
Okay.
to this point where even if your situation is bad, whatever that looks like, health problems, job situation, whatever it is, sometimes that fear of change, even though you know it might be better, is enough to prevent you from making that change because you know what to expect. The devil you know, right? Kind of
Yeah, it's
thing
like
is like,
paralyzing.
yeah, like I know how to adapt to what my current situation is. I know that my situation isn't optimal, but it's comfortable, if that makes sense. And
Yeah.
if I don't have the willingness to make a change that now brings me at a different point where I have to adapt to something different. Not everybody has that resilience, and I think that's a part of it. I think in my mind, at least in my opinion, is do we have the resilience to be able to adapt to the change? And for me, we know what it takes to grow in a lot of sense. Like we know that it takes uh, you know, lifting weights or whatever that is exercise to be able to grow in that kind of physical space. But we also know that sometimes that's a painful journey and it's an uncomfortable journey.
Right.
And that's a deterrent for a lot of people. And it's making a decision. So that for me, I think the key thing is it starts with a decision. When you, like, for example, when you were thinking about doing a PhD program, were you apprehensive? Were you afraid? Were you nervous, excited? Like what were the emotions that you were feeling at the time?
Well, I always wanted to study, what we say, health and human performance. So I was excited about learning. So I
Right.
have that. I had that going into the foundation of just being excited and wanting, and because for me it was a pivot. I went back in my 50s. I was in marketing. I always did research, but I had
Yeah.
somehow gravitated into market research and director of marketing. And so I really wanted to get back to like exercise science and understanding
Hmm.
health and human performance. So I had that initial desire to learn, but
Right.
then and taking that first step to apply, that didn't scare me actually. Because it's kind of like, I'm either going to get in or I'm not. It's either going to, at this point in
Yeah.
time, if I don't, I can try again. I think what scared me the most, where I had the like, what did I just do? Was honestly in our first class, the philosophy of scientific knowledge. It sounded like such a comfortable class. It really did.
Sure.
I was excited to learn it. The book looked interesting. And then all these new terms and new ways of thinking and new perspectives and things I had never heard of in my life. I really had to catch my breath and say, "Oh gosh, what did I just get myself into?" Because I don't know if you remember, it was like positivism and
Yep. Post-positivism
critical
and yep.
realism. There's this continuum of
Yep.
different theoretical ways of looking at the world and, all these different theorists and whatnot. And then I kind of had this anxiety, like, oh gosh, what did I just sign up for? It felt kind of big and scary.
Sure.
And then, in all honesty, it was probably, and then I had a teacher. I've talked about it many times on this podcast, the teacher, and we both had him. I won't say his name online. Anybody who's in the program listening to this knows this teacher. We all had some problems there, but he told me I wasn't going to make it. He said I wasn't good luck in the program. You're not going to make it. And I don't know. That just to me, just excuse my language, just pissed me off. Just put fuel to the fire. It just said,
Yeah.
I'm here because I want to be here, and I am going to make it, and nobody's going to tell me otherwise. And so then it all kind of changed. It became, you're here for you. This is your identity. This is where you want it to be. I'm intrinsically motivated to be here, and the rest is history. So that was kind of like my journey with all that.
Yeah.
I
So,
took, so, I mean, what about for you?
well, kind of similar, but I guess my question to you before I respond with my kind of
Sure.
history behind that is at some level, did you make the decision and did that help give you more confidence and comfort with moving forward? Like at some level, wasn't there a switch in you?
It's interesting that you asked me that question that way because there absolutely was a switch for me. There was a
Yeah.
class and see in our program it was online and we wrote a lot and we had these discussion boards and we had to write our original posts and then respond to two classmates and then on to you
Hmm.
and then you respond back. And it was just all this back and forth writing because it was called asynchronous learning. So it was an online program. Now we built our own community, but the school didn't really, it was really kind of a one-dimensional way of learning. And when I started reading some of our classmates' work, I was, again, I took another gulp, like, oh my gosh, you know? And then it was a switch. It was absolutely a switch. I just said to myself, you're here because you want to be here and just
Yeah.
go at your journey the way you want to enjoy it and learn. And then from that point on, it was a great experience. It was hard and there were obstacles, but it was just deeply rewarding. And
Yeah.
talk about the courage to grow. That mountain is behind us.
Exactly.
And it
And,
changed me. It changed me really at my identity and everything I understand and believe in.
yeah. And it should
Yeah.
give anyone who goes through something like that, PhD program, starting a business, whatever it is,
Right.
those things are scary, right?
Yeah.
And to be able to make a decision, and this is kind of this is how I'll frame my response to the
As I say,
question
you
is,
need to go. It's your
I
turn.
know uh, what I've noticed about myself, being introspective about it, is every single time when I have fear or apprehension, like podcasting or business or getting back into coaching, I mean, for several years, I've had this sort of gnawing, like imposter syndrome, kind of like, I don't think I'm ready. I don't think I'm good enough. I don't think people will like what I have to say. But here's the thing, whenever I have those kind of feelings, when I make a decision to do something, all of those voices go away for some reason.
Interesting.
So when I make a decision, and if this is what I really want to do, I don't start thinking about the stuff that it gets in my way that I cause myself. I don't let anything get in my way or
So,
anyone get in my way.
so
So it's this decision making process for me personally. When
okay.
I've made that decision, I'm going to do this PhD program. I'm going to do it. That's just it. I've done. I'm going to do it. It doesn't matter. For me now, it's a done deal, right?
But where does that come from? And here's the question, because I mean, I guess I was kind of the same, but when you don't do a very good job of calibrating your life and balancing your life, and you're lacking sleep, and you're not sometimes, just fitting the reality of fitting the workload in around your life, there's things sometimes get out of balance. And when those things happen, you're right for wanting to quit, or you're right for feeling like you're not good enough to be
Yeah,
there. I really think fatigue can really derail us on our goals.
sure,
You make bad food choices when you're fatigued. You
sure.
don't think straight about things. And so what do we tell people when you're at that moment, right? When you like how do you prevent yourself from getting at that moment? What kind of safety net can you put in for yourself so because I don't think everybody can just go like straight. Like
Yes.
I think
No, you're right.
so
So
what do you remember? What do you remember doing?
I think again, just once you make that decision to do something
Hmm.
and you may not know what the path looks like, first of all.
Hmm.
So you have to be uncomfortable with uncertainty. You're not going to know necessarily every single thing that's going to happen or how it's going to happen or the good or the bad. But I think for me, the recommendation is once you've made the decision, just do your best. You cannot necessarily control the outcome,
Okay.
but you can control you and how you approach it. Now, you can't control external things and external factors, and life gets in the way, family time, personal, family, friends, professional, all of that will get in the way. For personal, a professional example, recently I've been able to spend a lot more time on my fitness the last year. After the PhD program was done, I've been able to get back into reasonable shape. And I have my routine, right, with
Okay.
training and stuff.
Routine.
And professionally, I work a full-time job at a university, and my schedule has changed dramatically. Where I usually typically work from home, now we're working in an office 5 days a week, which means 3 or 4 hours out of my day to get ready and all these things. So now what it's done is it's interrupted my pattern of exercise and health and
Right.
fitness, and
Your
my
routine.
day-to-day routine is completely changed. I've had to modify when I train because I've already made that decision. This isn't going to interrupt me. I cannot control that outcome. I cannot control that obstacle. I mean, I can't control that because this is what my job has asked me to do for the time period. I will have to learn how to adapt. Or the alternative is I stop. And so I think the question is if you've made the decision and you're doing your best, you can't necessarily control the obstacles that come in your way. You can have some say over the outcome, but at the end of the day, you also have say over what you're willing to accept. And if for some reason um, it's just too much and it's not turning out to be the right decision, you kind of have to make a decision with yourself. Again, another decision.
Right.
Do I cut my losses? Maybe this wasn't the right decision in the first place, but now I need to make a new decision and be comfortable with the outcome of that new decision.
I like that. I mean, I remember one of our classmates said to me very early on, adaptation is the key to success.
Yes.
So you really, if you get to these points in your life where it just feels like the anxiety and the stress and the it's just bigger than it really needs to be for that moment. And you've
Yeah.
lost all enjoyment, and you've lost your why. You've
Yeah.
lost your passion in it, it might be a time to recalibrate, and
Of
adapt to
course.
something, and to be flexible, allow yourself to be flexible. I mean, we're living, breathing organisms. We're not meant to like live in like, you know, we're supposed to adapt. And so, you know, I
I
think
think
that might
keeping
be
your
a
eyes on the
strategy, actually, just learning to And having, I know for me, I have people in my life that who just really, I feel so, such as yourself and other people, like I just feel
Mm.
so blessed for them in my life because sometimes they just help me, I have the blinders on
Yeah,
and they help me put things in perspective, understanding like a fear, what's holding me back or pushing me to push myself. So I think it's
yeah,
important to not isolate yourself, you know, in the courage to
yes,
grow and accepting uncertainty. Don't go at it alone, because I think we all, to a certain degree, struggle with these types of things. Some people are able to push themselves much further than other people, but I think we
yeah,
all have this desire as human beings to want to learn and grow.
yeah. No, that's a great point. The value of community can't be understated, I think, too. And
No,
I'm guilty of that a lot as work, kind of being a solo. Well, I'm just going to push through myself. But
words alone.
right, I think one other thing that it kind of brings up too is at some level, I think most of us, if we really want something and we made the decision to go after it, like a PhD program, and you want to get your PhD, I think what keeps us going is the prospect of finishing that goal and getting that outcome is is a more positive and a more valuable thing to us than the obstacles themselves, right? Like the pain
Yeah.
of going through the process is still less than I know I'm going to feel when I finish that goal, when I get to that goal. And so that's another driver. And when you kind of have this shift where that now shifts to say, no, the pain of going through this is not worth the outcome, I think people start to pull back a little bit.
Yeah, it's really a balance. I made these little notes here. It's like too little discomfort, stagnation.
Yeah,
And if we go in the gym, we do light weights and I mean, it depends on what you're trying to achieve. I mean, that's really
sure.
important to understand what the end goal is. But if you don't push yourself, you're probably not gonna see any real growth there.
No.
Too much discomfort, our nervous systems, we shut down. We don't like it. Humans we don't like that. We don't like to feel,
Right.
it's just, it's part of our, the, I don't know, our physiology, I guess. And it's just this just enough discomfort is where the growth happens. And that's where I just think it's a challenge. And I don't know we're going to get to an answer. So we're just discussing it, but how do we know what is just enough? How do you know if you're holding yourself back and you're not pushing yourself enough? I mean, I just listened to some David Goggins motivational videos, and I mean, he's on the other end of the continuum of this conversation. And
Yes, yes,
and when you listen to him, it's really inspiring.
it is.
How do you get yourself, if that's what you're searching for in your life, how do you get there? It's really, it's quite something.
Yeah.
So,
What about you? What are you working on? What's changing into what's the courage to grow for you right now in this phase?
I hinted to it this morning on my social media reel. Well, like yourself, submitted abstracts to present our research at conferences. And I've been to conferences before professionally throughout my career. I've presented. I worked in the federal government. I used to present. I mean, it's not that, and I gave the commencement speech. I'm not scared of that. I'm just scared of getting to this foreign country that I've never been to, and
Yeah,
I'm going on my own. And I have a friend who's like, people are like, I love to solo travel. I'm like, well, I just have to get to it. I got to learn. I got to grow. I got to push myself outside that comfort zone and learn to love to be a solo traveler myself.
yeah,
But there's so many little details in it that I'm really struggling with that right now, right? It's in June. I'm not, like I said, I'm not worried about the presentation part. I
mm,
enjoy that. It's just the logistics of getting there. So I have figured out what it is. And it's one of my strategies. And when you learn from me, I'm really struggling. When you are kind of like, at this, like the anxiety starts to build, you need to figure out what it is. Yeah, we have to
mhm,
define it. We have to figure out, we have to bring it down to like a word and define it because it helps you understand it.
yeah,
Here we go, people. This is unplugged. I have a fear from my childhood because I got lost in Disney World as a little girl. I have a fear of getting lost. I figured it out.
Interesting.
That's where it is. That's where all this anxiety about growth to travel, because going to present internet at an international conference is an amazing opportunity, and I'm so
Hmm.
grateful for it. I truly am grateful for it. But it took me some work. It's taken me a few weeks now to like kind of dig and peel the onion back and be like, where is all this coming from? And so
Yeah.
I've had like three or four experiences in my life where I've gotten lost. Now it was before our phones and GPS and so it's not a rational fear. And I think if you're listening to us and to me, maybe you can relate to that feeling in some way. It's
Hmm.
not it's not rational. It's irrational. And if I get
Right.
lost, what's the worst thing that can happen? I ask for directions.
Right.
But that has pushed me into this, I wouldn't call it, there's the comfort zone, there's the learning zone, there's the panic zone. I wouldn't say it's a panic zone. But if I didn't understand it, it might perhaps have gotten to that level. And
Yeah.
then you can't function when your anxiety, we know from that Yerkes-Dodson law, some anxiety, and I don't know if I said that correctly, but some anxiety, it's good. It's good for performance. It's where we
Sure.
get our excitement to, the nerves before a race. I mean, it's where we get that like energy to crush
Sure.
it. But when that anxiety gets too high, it can impair performance. It can
Yeah.
really narrow your thinking and just, kind of wreak havoc. So, I see, and even talking about it, I just got nervous talking about it. Please, people, help me.
Well,
Follow me
first of
on this
all,
journey. Send me comments. How do I get through it?
well,
Ah,
first of all, congratulations. This is a huge thing.
oh gosh, I was just
It's,
stressed talking about it. It was horrible. I'm not there yet. I'm st
you'll get there. I think that
Ah,
it's a huge opportunity, and I think they definitely selected the right person for the conference and for
Rehan,
that
you're so
topic.
nice. Thank you. I appreciate you saying that.
But but really, I think you kind of touched on it, right? Like
Okay.
the anxiety is there for a reason.
Right.
Whether it's going to be uncomfortable. And so you have this decision made, right? You're going to go to this conference.
I'm registered.
Yes, and you're going to go to this conference. And because you know that the reward and the feeling that you're going to have when you're done is going to be tremendous and the accomplishment behind it. But you also have to accept that it's going to be a little bit of discomfort during this process. And
Yeah.
so becoming, I think, comfortable with the discomfort. I think you mentioned that earlier in our conversation is being comfortable with that process of being uncertain or being uncomfortable, or how do we get to that point? So what are some strategies that you're using to kind of give yourself that to overcome those uncomfortable feelings or that discomfort?
Well, first, I wanted to say, why don't we
Sure.
do a podcast episode in middle of July after
Sure.
I come back and we'll talk because you have a conference coming up too,
Well,
right?
hopefully, I have to submit and have to get accepted. But the goal is, if I'm selected, yes, I will be able to go in July and present my research as well.
See, so I think what we'll do is we will do a podcast episode this summer when these mountains are behind us, and we're going to talk about and we're going to come back to this episode, The Courage to Grow, and we're going to talk about looking back on these mountains and how these mountains change us. And for all of us, our mountains are different. I
Mhm.
mean, they really are. It can be health things that you have to get through. I mean, there's just different things. It can be things that we're
Sure.
excited about doing but there are also things that we just have to get through that are hard. So we'll look at these mountains in the rear view and we'll recognize that we'll have more mountains to climb.
That's what I was just going to say. It's like, okay, we're going to get over
Right.
these next kind of mountains and these next paths in front of us, but there's going to be more behind that, hopefully, right? This isn't going to be where it
Exactly.
ends.
Because
Yeah.
that is such a great metaphor for what this podcast is all about. And it's funny because when we were trying, I wanted to get back on here together and we had some ideas, some exercise physiology kind of discussions. And then we just kind of decided let's do this conversation on the courage to grow because you just launched your podcast and you're taking kind of this leap of faith, kind of building this new, revisiting this passion you've always had and finding more space for it in your life to be a strength and conditioning coach. And I want to mention to our listeners, and I will answer your question, my strategies, but I want to mention to our listeners how you also integrate tactical self-defense with strength training and just the mental strength that comes from that. And I will tell you some that when I was doing martial arts and self-defense, and I'll let you explain, what how you're using tactical defense, I felt really good. I felt really grounded. I felt really strong mentally when I was working on self-defense. So,
Yeah.
um, just real quick, strategies. Well, I've always been candid. I do therapy. I love it.
Hmm.
It's a luxury for me. It gives me a chance to just say whatever and have somebody just, you know, so it's good. I find it like it really helps me grow. Um, and I think it just was like an aha moment for me. So, yeah. Oh.
Well,
I don't
same.
have a specific strategy, people. I just think I try to define it for this specific feeling that I'm having and not let it kind of snowball into other things
Sure.
and try to figure it out. So, all
I
right.
mean, that's a great strategy. Therapy, I think, is important. I go through therapy myself off and on, and
I think it's a
I think
luxury. I'm always like, I feel bad.
I think it is a luxury, and I think that's kind of the sad part, right? It's looked at as a luxury, and not everyone
Yeah.
has access to it. And when you talk about accessibility, and there's a lot of people that really need it. Some of us use it for performance enhancement, mindset, and trying to take us to another level mentally. And I think that's a
Yeah.
valid reason. But I think really it is an important aspect for many people, and it is nice to have someone else to talk to that is impartial and can give you different perspectives. I think that's always a helpful thing.
Yeah, and I think it fits within this framework of because I want to always push myself. There are
Yeah,
things that I want to do that are feel very big and scary, athletic things that I want to do. And I feel like I need somebody to continue to say, it's okay
yeah,
to want to go after these things,
sure.
You're not too
Yep.
old, or you're not, I mean, all the things that are the voices that we have to, you're too old, or, somebody your age can't do something like that, all those types of things. And,
Yep.
just push through those types of things. Okay.
Awesome.
Tell us about what tactical strength training is.
So yeah, that's a great segue. So to be clear, I do have a tactical strength and conditioning facilitator certification through the National Strength and Conditioning Association. So it's the TSAC-F, and so it's something I've had for a while. I am not law enforcement. I'm not military. I don't have that background, but I do have a firearms instruction background as well for the last 3 or 4 years. So it's a space where I've been exposed to the tactical side for a while, in terms of certification, in terms of education and that knowledge. And now I'm looking at it from a firearms perspective. And firearms are used it's kind of a polarizing topic, so I won't go too deep into that.
Right.
But the point is, self-defense, I think, is an important component. However, that looks for the individual, martial arts and
Hmm.
boxing, or even just general awareness. I
Hmm.
think how many of us now in society today are walking around with our phones in our face like this, and we're walking
Right.
around and we are completely unaware of what's going on around us.
True. True.
And that is negatively impacting someone's ability to defend themselves in a situation. And so when you come back to mindset, I think it's being mentally prepared on being aware of your surroundings and having the wherewithal to really understand, like, what is your plan if something were to go wrong? Are you physically capable of mitigating a threat? Are you mentally ready or prepared to also kind of go through that process? And I mean, really, nobody really knows until you've gone through something traumatic, and hopefully none of us will ever have to do that. But you try to give yourselves as many tools as you can in the hope that if you ever were put in a position like that, that you would be able to respond, right?
Okay.
And I think a lot of us have to think about, physical preparedness, I think is a big part of it. And that's where I think the strength and conditioning side comes into play.
Yeah.
I'm a big I'm a big believer to say if you're going to take a step and put the responsibility on yourself to own a firearm or some other way of defending yourself, that you really should be physically prepared first. Because your first response shouldn't be to fight. You really should be looking at how do I, number one, prevent myself from being in a situation like that in the first place? Or number two, how do I escape a situation like that and really put myself into a safe space? And so to answer your question, I think physical preparedness is a huge component of that. And I think beyond the mental side and the physical side, that really is the best tools you really have when it comes to being prepared. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, and I think a couple things that you just said. When I, you know, done martial arts, I've worked on that journey in two periods of my life in my 20s, and then I went back in my 50s. I'd like to find my way back to it at some point.
Yeah,
Um, but it's interesting because you train not to use it. You train to
exactly.
be observant and to um, got not get yourself into these conflict situations.
Yeah,
Um, unless they're absolutely, unless you absolutely need it for survival and they're thrust upon you.
exactly.
But I do think you bring up a really good point. And what is the name of your business now for tactical strength training?
Yeah, so it's Apex Tactical Athletics.
Okay.
That's the name of the actual coaching side of it. And so that's where the focus is. It's kind of bringing a little bit of a tactical flavor, but it still is relatable to everyone. It doesn't have to be a specific person or persona that's really looking for a tactical specific type of program, but it's kind of using some elements of that load, that stress, and how can we lead to better performance, right?
Okay, so it's APEC, APE,
X, a
tactical
athletics.
athletics.
Yeah,
And then it's the next set podcast within that platform.
correct. Yep.
And these are two projects that you have just literally launched in the last few months. So
Yep.
I want to say congratulations because you personify what this conversation is all about today, about having the courage to grow. So yeah, I'm really
Thank
proud of
you.
you.
Appreciate it.
Um, and one other thing I wanted to say about physical strength. When you ask me strategies, because I do suffer from anxiety and, things like that. And some of it's just dealing with things, our life journeys are all different. And we've all had to process different things in our environment and our experiences in our lives. So it's highly individualized.
Yes.
Um, the one thing that, and I should have mentioned it earlier, but I got kind of nervous when you started asking me all those questions.
Sorry.
I am the interviewer. No, I'm just kidding. It's good. It's all good. We're friends, and hopefully our listeners will learn from us. Something that's, I mean, always has been essential for me is physical activity.
Yeah.
I have to have it in my life. I interview people and I write stories for people, and on my podcast I hear people. There are large groups of people who have to have physical activity in their life. It's how they
Yeah.
manage all of this stuff we're talking about. When
Yeah.
you have big decisions in your life and you don't know which direction to take, go for a run,
Yeah.
go for a swim, go do something physical. We could get into a physiology conversation about it, but it redirects the energy, it redirects the chemicals that stress releases in your body. So for me, in these high anxiety periods of my life, especially during the PhD journey, you know, I would just go for a long swim. And I tell you, it's incredible. Or a long walk or a long run or a bike ride, whatever it was. Or go punch the bag in the martial arts
Yeah.
studio.
Yeah.
Whatever it was, it just after you do that, it's very it just changes your whole outlook. So that's really important. That was essential for me.
Yeah.
So I would love to encourage people that to always keep that physical activity component in your life. All right, well, where it's funny because we can just talk, but I hope that we made some sense today.
Well, I think we did. I mean, it's
Okay.
nice to just chat and just catch up, and I hope that, I think the listeners would appreciate that, all of us are human, all of us have our own
Yeah.
paths to go forward, and just like all humans, we all have our own anxieties and concerns, and we have to just find a way to get through them as best we can.
Yeah, I mean, Brene Brown has this amazing TED Talk from years ago about vulnerability. And I think the truth is what we just did here today is we just said, like, we're both human. We both
Hmm.
want to be successful and grow. You have to allow yourself to be a little vulnerable and understanding that sometimes it's not going to feel great. And
Hmm.
that's okay because that's exactly where you need to be when you're growing and to not be afraid of failure, right?
Hmm. Yep.
Failure is a great learning opportunity. It really, I don't know why we've been wired in our lives to avoid it, but geez, you can learn so much in failure, right?
Failure is
And
feedback. Yeah,
it's feedback and the setbacks, nobody likes a setback, but boy, can you figure out what you're made of in a setback. So
that's right.
all these things are part of growth and a growth mindset. And so that's it. What else do you want to do? I'll let you kind of wrap up today. We haven't really kept an eye on the clock, so hopefully
Yeah, no, this is good. I mean, I'm excited to have the conversation, and I think would love to come back in July and level set where we're at and see how the conference went for you, and hopefully how a conference went for me, and talk about that and our experiences there. And I think there's going to be a lot of growth that we're both going to see over several months, over the next few months or a year.
okay. And
Exciting
if
to watch.
if I get lost, you'll come find me, right?
There you go. Nice. Make sure you're posting updates so we know how to follow
Somebody will
along.
come find me, bring me home. Okay, listen. The next podcast episode, my friend Andrew Schubauer is coming back on because we felt like we wanted to continue that conversation on enjoyment and we want to talk about, and this actually kind of hits on it too, this conversation today, about how when we allow ourselves to grow, when we push ourselves outside our comfort zone, when we get comfortable with uncertainty and we pursue things that we enjoy in our life and we're intrinsically motivated to push ourselves into these new spaces, as my friend Rehan is doing right now, we start to form these identities.
Hmm.
We don't have to just have one and that's it, and you carry it through your whole life. You can do these resets. You can go after these new goals, and you can really live your best life. That's what this podcast is all about. It's a health promotion platform where we are constantly encouraging people to live your best life, to go through self-actualization, get your life to a point where you're just enjoying it. And
Hmm.
sometimes, it takes some identity shifting in that. And so Andrew and I are going to have that conversation next week. And then over the next couple of months, I have some really outstanding guests coming on the show that we're just going to dive deep into all these conversations about mental strength, physical strength, and just people are out there crushing their goals. They're so inspiring. So I'm excited to bring them to you on the PhD Journey Unplugged podcast platform. Rehan, I wish you absolutely all the best. I'm a subscriber, so subscribe. The Next Set podcast for Dr. Rehan Tahir is available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Your content is great. He just did an episode on GLP-1s, and it's not yay or nay. It's just an honest conversation about it, and it
Yeah.
was really good. And what do you have planned next?
A little bit of a continuation of today is I would like to talk about the general adaptation syndrome,
Oh, okay.
Hans Selye, and talk about these little micro traumas and these little micro discomforts that we can put ourselves through. So I think I'll talk a little bit more about that.
I
Be
think that'll
interesting.
be great. And
Yeah.
I look forward to listening to it. All right,
Cool.
everybody. As always, thank you for tuning in. We're grateful to have this platform to educate and motivate, and we will be back. Stay tuned.
Thank you.
All
Bye.
right. Bye. Thanks, Rayhan.